Ladies and gentlemen, you can spot a narcissist by the trail they leave behind. It is a trail of confusion, hollow promises, and relationships drained of trust. They charm first, but the charm is bait, not care. They demand loyalty. They never return. They rewrite the past, so they never face the truth. And worst of all, they believe the world owes them everything while they owe nothing to anyone. If you have ever found yourself questioning your sanity around someone, you may have crossed paths with one. Today we will uncover the 7 sins that reveal their true face. When you first meet someone with strong narcissistic traits, it often begins with charm. They know how to make you feel noticed, valued, even chosen. They read people quickly, picking up on insecurities, hopes, and the quiet need to be understood. At the start, this can feel like connection. It feels rare and meaningful, but this charm is not a doorway to genuine closeness. It is bait. Once you let them into your life, the warmth begins to fade and the confusion begins to rise. What makes their charm so dangerous is that it creates an early picture of who you think they are. You trust the version they showed you in the beginning, and you keep trying to reconcile that memory with the person standing in front of you later. They count on that. They count on your ability to doubt yourself before doubting them. Over time, you start noticing that their interest is selective. They listen only when the topic is about them or somehow returns to their accomplishments. If you share something personal or painful, you might see their attention drift. They might give shallow reassurance or redirect the conversation back to their own problems. Yet, they always know how to pretend enough empathy to keep you invested. The confusion grows slowly. You find yourself wondering why you feel uncertain after talking to them. You question whether you misunderstood something. They speak with confidence even when they twist facts. They deny things they just said. They act offended when you express a reasonable concern. They insist you are too sensitive or misremembering or overthinking without realizing it. You start tracking your own reactions instead of their behavior. You try to be calmer, clearer, more careful. You try to avoid conflict. You try to give them more benefit of the doubt. Meanwhile, they offer none in return. What makes their influence powerful is not that they are smarter or stronger. It is that they know how to create uncertainty in the people around them. Once you feel uncertain, you become easier to guide. You become quieter, you pull back on your boundaries, you accept explanations that do not make sense because you want to keep the peace. They feed off that. They see yourself, doubt as permission. They see your patience as opportunity. A narcissist thrives in environments where others assume fairness. They use the natural goodwill of decent people as a shield for their own behavior. If they compliment you, you feel grateful. If they criticize you, you assume it must be valid. If they mistreat you and then offer a small gesture of kindness, you feel relieved. The push and pull keeps you invested. Even though you can never quite find solid ground, the truth is that their charm was never a reflection of who they really are. It was a tool to get what they wanted. Once that charm fades, you are left trying to understand why you feel drained, confused, and uncertain. Recognizing this pattern is the first step to stepping out of their pull and reclaiming clarity that was yours from the start. A narcissist treats the people around them as sources of supply. That is the simplest way to describe exploitation, but it does not capture how quietly it begins. They do not start by asking for everything. They start by taking small pieces of your time, your energy, your patience. You might not even notice the shift because you want to help and helping feels natural. At first, it seems harmless. They need a favor. They need advice. They need encouragement. You give it freely because you think you are supporting someone who will eventually give the same in return. But that return never comes. What makes their exploitation so effective is how they frame their needs as urgent and your needs as optional. Your concerns become interruptions. Their concerns become emergencies. You slowly learn that the easiest way to keep the peace is to give in. They present themselves as overwhelmed or misunderstood or mistreated by the world, and you step in to balance things for them. You carry more weight and they carry less. You soothe their frustration while they ignore yours. They drain your energy because they believe they deserve it. Over time, you begin to notice a pattern. They ask for emotional support, but they do not offer any back. They expect you to forgive quickly, but they cling to your mistakes. They want praise for minor effort, but roll their eyes at your real accomplishments. Everything becomes uneven. They feel entitled to take what you have, whether it is attention, stability, confidence, or resources. If they see that you are generous, they push a little harder. If they see that you are tired, they insist you can handle more. They use your strengths against you. They admire your qualities only long enough to benefit from them. The moments when you need something from them reveal the truth. If you are upset, they seem irritated by the inconvenience. If you need help, they offer excuses instead of action. If you set a boundary, they treat it as an offense. To them, your limitations are barriers that get in the way of their comfort. They do not see you as a person with your own inner world. They see you as a service that should remain available. What makes this exploitation so painful is the subtle guilt they create. You start believing that saying no makes you selfish. You fear disappointing them because their reactions can shift from cold silence to sudden charm. They reward you only when you give them what they want. That reward keeps you hooked even when it comes at the cost of your well-being. The longer you stay in their orbit, the more you adjust your life around their expectations. You explain away their behavior. You work harder to keep things steady. You shrink your needs to make room for theirs. But nothing you do is ever enough because the problem is not your effort. The problem is that they do not see relationships as shared spaces. They see them as opportunities. Once you recognize that truth, you can finally pull back and protect the parts of yourself they hope you do not notice you are losing. Manipulation is the heartbeat of a narcissist's influence, and it rarely appears in sharp, obvious forms. It slips in quietly, coated in confidence and half-truths. You start noticing the signs only after you've already adjusted yourself around their reactions. They speak with certainty even when they distort something you witnessed with your own eyes. They deny statements they made hours earlier. They turn accusations into counterattacks. The goal is never honesty. The goal is control over how you see them, how you see yourself, and how you interpret every conflict. The most unsettling part is how natural their lies sound. They do not hesitate. They do not pause to think. They deliver distortions with calm conviction, making you question whether you measured or misunderstood. When you confront them with facts, they shift the conversation so fast you lose track of the original point. Suddenly, you're defending your tone instead of addressing their behavior. You're apologizing even though they wronged you. They know that confusion wears people down, and a tired mind is easier to guide than a confident one. Gaslighting becomes their quiet weapon. They act shocked when you remember something they want you to forget. They insist they would never say something so cruel even though they did. They claim you are imagining things, exaggerating or overthinking. Over time, you start relying on their version of events more than your own instinct. You look for their approval before trusting your own judgment. You second-guess reactions that were perfectly reasonable. They reshape your sense of reality until you are reluctant to challenge them at all. Their manipulation also works through emotional shifts. One moment they offer praise, warmth, and affection. The next moment they withdraw with cold indifference. This unpredictability keeps you focused on getting back to the moments when they were kind. You try to be more patient, more understanding, more careful. You internalize the idea that peace depends on your behavior when in truth the chaos comes from them. They use these swings deliberately because it keeps you off balance and eager to please. Another tactic they rely on is selective vulnerability. They might share a sad story or a painful memory. When they feel you pulling away, suddenly they seem human, misunderstood, in need of comfort. You soften, you feel guilty for doubting them, but as soon as the moment passes, the vulnerability disappears. It was not a bridge to intimacy. It was bait to pull you closer when you were gaining clarity. What makes manipulation so damaging is that it works slowly. You rarely notice the exact moment when you begin to silence yourself, tolerate more, or shrink your boundaries. You just wake up one day realizing you no longer trust your own thoughts the way you used to. That realization hurts, but it also frees you, because the moment you see their patterns clearly, their influence begins to crumble. Their control depends on confusion. Your clarity is what breaks their hold. A narcissist's lack of empathy is not always obvious at first. They can imitate concern when it suits them. They can nod in the right places and say the right phrases, but the feeling behind their words is hollow. You sense it when you share something deeply personal, and their response feels disconnected from your emotional reality. They might give a quick comment that sounds supportive, yet you walk away feeling strangely unseen. Over time, that hollow feeling becomes a pattern you can no longer ignore. Their inability to connect with your inner world shows up in the moments that matter most. When you are hurting, they act impatient or inconvenienced. They shift the focus back to themselves, comparing your pain to their own or minimizing what you feel. If you express frustration or sadness, they treat it like an interruption to their comfort. You end up hiding your emotions because you learn that expressing them only leads to criticism, dismissal, or indifference. What makes their lack of empathy even more damaging is how they disguise it behind self-protective logic. They tell you that you are too emotional. They claim you are making a big deal out of nothing. They insist they are being rational while you are being dramatic. But beneath their arguments is a simple truth. They cannot or will not step into your experience. They do not try to understand what something means to you. They only evaluate how it affects them. This emotional distance becomes clearer in relationships that require give and take. When you need comfort, they offer solutions instead of understanding. When you seek closeness, they become uncomfortable. When you need steady support, they vanish or detach. They do not know how to meet someone in a vulnerable place without feeling threatened. Compassion requires humility, and humility threatens the image they protect. So they stay guarded, cold, or sharply practical in moments when warmth would mean everything. Their lack of empathy also shows in how quickly they shift from charm to cruelty. They can mock your insecurities during an argument. They can say hurtful things with no hesitation. They can watch you struggle without offering genuine help. Later, if questioned, they may act confused about why their words mattered so much. They simply do not feel the weight of what they do, and that absence of emotional awareness allows them to cross lines with ease. You might try to explain your feelings in clearer ways, hoping they will finally understand. You might work harder to express yourself gently. You might try to meet their emotional needs so they will meet yours, but the imbalance never shifts. They take your compassion without offering their own. They rely on your emotional depth while guarding their own emptiness. The turning point comes when you finally accept that their reactions are not about your worth. They are about their limitations. You cannot teach someone to feel what they do not feel. And you cannot keep sacrificing your emotional well-being in the hope that one day they will suddenly understand you. Recognizing their lack of empathy is painful, but is also the moment you begin to choose yourself again. Jealousy in a narcissist is not the loud, obvious kind you see in movies. It often slips in quietly in a look, a small comment, or a sudden shift in their mood. At first, you might not realize what triggered the change. You share good news, expecting support, and instead you get a flat response. You see the tension in their face, the way they steer the conversation away from your success. What should feel like a moment of celebration turns into something uncomfortable. Their silence or irritation tells you everything they do not say out loud. They struggle to handle other people's achievements because it threatens the image they build for themselves. When someone close to them succeeds, they do not see it as progress for the relationship. They see it as a comparison. Your growth makes them aware of their own stagnation. Your joy reminds them of what they have not earned. Instead of feeling inspired, they feel exposed, and rather than face that discomfort, they shift their focus to tearing down what you are proud of. They might do it subtly, offering a compliment with an edge. They question whether your success will last. They suggest you got lucky. They downplay the effort you put in. Sometimes they hide their jealousy behind concern. They warn you not to get your hopes up. They claim they are only trying to be realistic, but their words are not grounded in support. They are rooted in insecurity. They cannot celebrate you because they believe your rise pushes them lower. As this pattern repeats, you start withdrawing from sharing good news. You learn that your happiness comes with a cost. You hold back your excitement and shrink your victories so they will not react poorly. You begin protecting their ego instead of enjoying your own progress. This is how their jealousy slowly dims your light. It teaches you to mute yourself to keep the peace. Their jealousy does not stop with achievements. It shows up in your relationships with others. If friends or family value you, they may feel threatened. If someone else praises you, they might compete for attention. They want to be the center of every room you walk into. When they see you building connections that do not rely on them, they feel replaced. Instead of being proud that you are loved and appreciated, they question your motives or accuse others of having hidden agendas. Their fear of comparison turns into criticism. They might make small cuts at your confidence. They highlight your flaws during vulnerable moments. They keep you doubting yourself so you will not rise too far above the version of you they can manage. The more insecure you feel, the more secure they feel. It is a cycle that keeps them comfortable and you diminished. Over time, you begin to see that their jealousy is not about you winning. It is about them fearing that they are not enough. They cannot look at someone else's success without measuring it against their own reflection. And until you recognize that their reactions come from their own emptiness, you will keep trying to earn approval they cannot give. The freedom begins when you stop apologizing for your joy. Their jealousy belongs to them, not you. Your light does not dim their worth. It only exposes their unwillingness to grow. Chaos is the atmosphere a narcissist creates, often without admitting it, and sometimes without even realizing how much damage it causes. It shows up in small disruptions at first. Plans shift for no reason. Conversations twist in directions that leave you confused. Conflicts appear out of nowhere. One moment everything feels calm, and the next you find yourself defending something you never said or reacting to a problem you did not create. Their presence slowly turns your daily life into a series of emotional adjustments. You learn to brace yourself for sudden changes in tone, mood, or expectations. This chaos is not random. It keeps them at the center of attention. When peace settles, people start thinking clearly. They form their own opinions. They notice patterns. They find stability. But stability makes a narcissist uncomfortable because it takes away their control. So they stir tension even in subtle ways. They interrupt calm moments with criticism. They bring up old grievances at strange times. They challenge harmless comments and turn them into debates. They shift the emotional temperature of a room because steady environments do not serve their need for dominance. You start absorbing the instability without meaning to. You anticipate their reactions. You adjust your tone, you soften your words, you keep checking whether they are in a good mood before bringing up anything that matters. You walk on unstable ground, constantly guessing which version of them you will encounter. Even when they are quiet, the unpredictability lingers in the back of your mind. Your nervous system becomes trained to stay alert. You lose the sense of safety that healthy relationships create. Their emotional swings play into this chaos. They might show warmth in the morning, distance in the afternoon, and intense irritation in the evening. When you ask what changed, they act confused. They claim you are imagining it. They insist everything is fine. This denial keeps you doubting your perception. You begin believing the problem is your sensitivity instead of their volatility. And the more you doubt yourself, the more control they gain. Their drama also pulls attention away from their own flaws. If they create enough noise, no one can focus on their responsibility. They fill conversations with conflict, so no one has time to address the real issue. They overwhelm you with emotional intensity, so you forget what you were upset about. The chaos becomes a smoke screen that protects their ego while exhausting yours. In this environment, you start losing pieces of yourself. You stop expressing needs because they spark arguments. You stop pointing out unfair behavior because it leads nowhere. You shrink your personality to avoid becoming the next target. The chaos drains your energy and replaces it with constant vigilance. You function in survival mode, not connection. They thrive in that imbalance because it keeps you dependent on the rare moments when they are kind or calm. The turning point arrives when you finally recognize that peace is not impossible. It simply cannot grow in the presence of someone who uses disorder as a tool. Once you understand that the chaos is not accidental, but part of the dynamic, you begin reclaiming your stability. You begin craving a life where calm moments stay calm, and where your emotions do not depend on someone else's storms. And once you taste that clarity, the chaos loses its power over